Hello and welcome to another edition of the Rest is Entertainment Questions Edition.
Hello, and you are?
And I'm Marina, Hyde.
I like that you always forget to introduce yourself.
Get my name.
I almost forgot to introduce myself there. Hello everyone, I'm Richard Osman, question and answers edition of the Rest is Entertainment.
This is so professional, the top of this show.
Do you know what? That was pretty slick.
This is actually liquid. I mean,
That
I don't know
was
what to,
pretty
no notes for
slick.
myself. No notes.
Yeah, the channel have come back. They love it. Hold on, I'm getting a call from Gary Lineker saying, now, loads and loads of questions this week about The Apprentice. I think perhaps we'll leave The Apprentice until that series is finished, because there's a few things I want to know about The Apprentice as well. The main one being, why do they keep getting up at 4 a.m. and then saying you've got to be in the car in 20 minutes, and then they get in the car and it's absolute daylight. So I'm going to find that out for you before that series ends. But let's start with something else. Pam Greatorex has written in. She says, every time I see a dead body on film or television, keep it light, Pam, especially on a stainless steel mortuary table, I wonder how the actor stays so still. Sometimes there will be an extended shot of the corpse and there is no sign of a pulse or a breath. How are these scenes filmed?
The casting of a corpse is a thing. Like, they don't just say, like, okay, get that person, they'll be able to lie still, because people can't. And some people do freak out, and so you have to sort of audition by lying still, like pretend you're doing an MRI or something. They used to not linger on the chest for those reasons that you say, Pam, which is that it's really hard to stay still. But now, this is like one of the big routine instances of VFX. They capture it at rest, the chest, at one moment, and then they layer that still over all of the rest of the footage. I spoke to a producer of a show about forensic pathology. He said one of the most interesting things he discovered was that those drawers where the corpses are in a morgue are, I'm afraid, unless you're in a hospital, are completely a TV conceit for, I suppose, for you. In the big city morgues, there were open racks of shelving, and all of the people, it's just a giant fridge.
Like a
with
Benetton
open
of
racks.
death.
Yes, I mean... Yes, I'm sorry to say.
Oh, no.
And he said it was just extraordinary. You know, there was a sort of, you know, the ones which were clearly gang members because there were so many tattoos, and then you'd see the autopsy thing. And the smell, of course, which people will always talk to you about, the formaldehyde and things like that. He says he thinks about it probably every day, that one kind of research.
Pam is sitting at home now going, do you know what? I wish I hadn't asked.
I wish I hadn't asked, yes. Anyway, in hospitals, they do have the drawers with the corpses, but in the big city morgues across America, it's all large rooms and everybody is just on open racks.
Wow.
So, sorry, that's not specifically about television, but I suppose it was research for a television show. So anyway, it's a little piece of information that we probably wouldn't have covered in the course of the show otherwise.
But essentially, there are some actors who are very, very good at being still, and now they cheat the not breathing.
Yeah, well, they can do,
well.
it's a VFX job. It's a quite simple bit of VFX, so it's not too expensive.
But also, it's quite a big gig, that, isn't it? So you have to lie very still, and also usually heavily made up, either looking dead or with injuries or...
Well, for those ones where, you know, it's an open eye corpse, that's the VFX is particularly helpful because, as you know, I mean, obviously, how long between a blink, and especially if someone's telling you not to do it. So that is all, you know, this is why you can have open eye ones. But it's also part of the reason why you can spend longer now around these tables looking at the corpse, because they are able to use VFX. Definitely one for you, Richard. It's quiz show scoring.
Oh, that sounds a bit lighter.
Yes.
Okay.
Jordan Cracknell says, I love quiz shows like Have I Got News for You and Would I Lie to You? But one thing that's always baffled me is that only a subset of questions make the edit, hence the extended versions of the shows, and yet the final scores get read out at the end. Do they, 1, know which questions will make the final cut when filming? 2, film the host reading the final scores for every possible combination of edits. Wow. 3, assume no normal person will actually care about the scores for these shows and therefore not care about the discontinuity.
It's a good question, Jordan. And also, your 1, 2, and 3 are very insightful, because it's sort of a mixture of all of those 3 things. So with shows like Have I Got News and Would I Lie to You, etc., people think, oh, their scores don't matter. But actually, they sort of do in a way. If you're making a format, the fact that there's a competition and someone wins at the end, it just means you're sort of cradled throughout. So you can enjoy it. You can enjoy what you're listening to. So, you know, I would always say in a format, ask a question in the first minute that's answered in the last minute. And all those shows it's Ian against Paul, who's going to win. And so we're just in safe hands. We've got somewhere to return to. So the points sort of do matter in a way for the format, but of course don't matter in another way. Paul and Ian are not spending the whole week kind of boning up on the news because, you know,
they want
Paul's
to win.
3-2 down. You know,
I would find it incredibly hard to override the thing to just want to get the most points. It's like fully misunderstanding every single thing about the show, but there's just an aspect of me that would want to get the most points.
Occasionally you get guests on Have I Got News for You, And you know the vibe there. You know, if someone says, "Oh, and what's this story in Scotland this week?" and it's about Nicola Sturgeon, and you'll get sometimes a politician or something who will just buzz in and go, "This is the Nicola Sturgeon story," and
I
just
really can see myself in this. I'm cringing at my.
Let's move on. Let's move on because I think I've got the point there. And then you kind of go, okay, maybe we'll talk around it a tiny bit more before we get to and then I'll give you the point. We can't just do. It's not Mastermind.
The show would be over in 15 minutes if we didn't do
exactly that.
Jokes.
So yes, what you would do ordinarily, as you say, if you're making, let's say, Would I Lie to You? It's an interesting one, which is you've got 4 guests, the 2 team captains. Everyone's probably got 2 stories. There's too much to put in the show, but not by much. You'll lose 2 or 3 stories. And it's one of the few shows, Would I Lie to You, where the compilation thing of stuff that gets cut out is one of the best shows you'll ever see because they're cutting out good stuff on that show. So on that show, Jordan's absolutely right. 2 things. Firstly, up in the gallery, you're watching, and as you go along, you're doing a paper edit, essentially. You're going, that story's definitely staying in. That one's definitely staying in. This one, I don't know, it's interesting. That bit was brilliant, but, that person's already got a good story in this week. But by the end of the show, you'll have a rough idea of which stories you want in and which stories you want cut out. So you will know what the scores would be as per your paper edit. But Jordan is also correct that occasionally you'll also go, I'm not sure about that one or that one, which one we're losing. And in which case, it's either going to be 4-3 to Lee or it's going to be 4-all. So you then just get Rob to say, and it's a win for Lee, or it's 4-3 to Lee, or, and this week it's a draw. Because you just want to cover yourself in the edit. So, everything you're watching is the stuff that happened, but just occasionally you kind of go, are we definitely keeping that story in? Or you just think, that story was great, but it was really long. Is that going to fit with the rest? So same with Have I Got News For You? You're sitting in the gallery, you're paper editing as you go, which you always do with those shows. So you record for a couple of hours and you've only got half an hour. And when you produce those shows, you get, you get very experienced about what's going to make it in and what's not going to make it in. And you have to lose some really... Anyone who's ever been to a recording of those shows goes, oh my God, there was that unbelievably funny bit and you didn't put it in. You think, because if we put that in, it was referencing something in the previous round, which was referencing something at the beginning.
That we took out.
Which happened off camera.
I see.
Also, and so you kind of go, you can't put everything in. So you're constantly doing a paper edit in the gallery and then thinking, what would that do to the score if we lost that? Occasionally on Have I Got News For You, you might do a kind of quick fire, high point scoring round. And if it doesn't go very well, you think, okay, well, the points now don't make any sense, so you change them. So it's a bit of everything is the truth. And it's not really TV fakery. It's kind of a nice cradle to have scores, and you just want to make sure they make some sense.
Yeah.
But certainly if you went back over every single episode of all of those shows and added up the actual scores, there'd be the odd inconsistency. But Whose Line Is It Anyway, which I used to do, we'd just say, the scores don't matter. So on that, Clive would just say, there's 1 million points to Ryan, it's 40 points to Colin. And at the end, they say the winner is Greg Proops. You think, you just gave 1 million points to Ryan. So how's Greg winning? And so on that show, it was just, we don't have to worry about it. Yeah. But by and large, people are trying to play fair, is the truth. Marina Rod Hutchison asks, following on from your discussion of the media and Princess Kate, what is the hierarchy of reporters in a newsroom? I always imagine the royal correspondents being seen as a bit of a joke by other reporters and the war correspondents at the top of the tree.
I love this question so much. I've got a lot to divulge and got a lot to get off my chest. It's really interesting. It would depend on the title and it would depend on the times, as in the era of the whatever. I mean... When I first started, I worked at the Sun. I was a secretary on the Sun showbiz desk. There was this royal guy. He was a royal correspondent guy called Charlie Ray. I mean, a real sea monster. And they had immense self-regard. I will get onto the hierarchy in a minute because I've got a lot. One of the things the royal correspondents do is that they think that the royal family like them. First of all, they become quite grand, as in they might accept a few posies themselves and bouquets from well-wishers. And second of all, they reckon that, we used to have such a... Harry used to love us. It's like, it should be patently obvious to you by now that he never liked you. He regards you as complicit in a machine of death that killed his mother, and he really, really hates you. But they're all now like, he's changed. I used to have a laugh with him. Okay, so it just depends. When there's a lot of royal stories, then, and if you can get the splash, as it used to, the front page of the paper, which obviously now most people read things online and it doesn't mean so much, but There are periods in newsrooms where showbiz is really big. I don't think showbiz is as big as it used to be. Now, most of the stories, I think, sort of they want, it's stuff that's happened on Instagram or things that people have put in the public domain themselves. So it never doesn't feel to me such a big story-getting engine of things. Politics in, say, tabloids used to be nothing. Used to get nothing at all. And then over the last few years, politics has been really in the ascendancy because of all the kind of convulsions after Brexit and all of that. So you could really get the splash a lot of times.
There's been some big storylines.
There's been some big plot lines. Then there are hierarchies within hierarchies, okay? Like the sports guys never come in the office. The first tournament I did, I went to the World Cup in 2006. Some of the stuff that was said to me, I mean, genuinely, it's like, hey, guys, we're in the 21st century. I mean, it was really unreconstructed. And I wondered whether they were just like on tour the whole time. They kind of lived in hotel rooms quite a lot. They just hadn't actually realised that society had moved on about 30 years beyond. But they have hierarchies within hierarchies, the sports reporters. I was interested to discover that somebody had at some point sort of created this system where they would refer to the chief sports writers, not all of the chief sports writers, by the way, but most of them, as the Dukes. So there was the Dukes, then there was the football number ones, then there was the football numbers two, and then there were the scufflers. Now, the scufflers were just the ones like trying to go and get little quotes in the mix zone, which is basically the equivalent of a sort of tunnel after the game where the players are, but it's not, it's a kind of private area and you might get quotes when they're coming out. I would say that the Dukes to Scufflers system was semi-ironic, but honestly, the way that a lot of people behaved, it was like, you felt like it was a sort of hierarchy that you might have seen in a kind of failing minor public school clinging onto the cliffs in like the 1950s, where people in the old days would have been sent off to run the empire, but when there wasn't one anymore, why was this really happening? I did feel that to a large extent, football was kind of like that. Let me think about the rest of it in the newsroom. If you get any brackets in your job title, you've massively fucked up. Okay, special projects. Hi, you're being fucked over probably because of a mistake you've made. If you go over special project, that's what it means in my view. And anyway, please.
See, I would have thought, that's the big investigative department.
Yeah.
That's.
The lobby also don't come in. So again, there are sort of...
That's the political...
Yeah, that's the political route. They have offices in Parliament. There's a sort of lobby corridor and some other places. And so they don't come in. So again, those are sort of little communities that form that are not really part of the office life, as it were. But then, I mean, the columnists, in my view, which often don't come in, I mean, the columnists are the worst. A lot of people don't come in, but now they've tried to bring people back to the office. The columnists are the worst. I mean, you guys probably know because, we elected one to run the country.
Oh, yeah.
But they can be pretty high maintenance. I have
Tell
to
me
say,
about it.
Yeah. I try to be the lowest maintenance possible, except in salary negotiations.
Yeah.
So if you're going to save your difficulty for something, I think that's the one to save it for. But I try to be as ultra... I've got this fantastic commentator, a guy called Hugh Muir at The Guardian. He's great. But I try to be as super low maintenance. But in general, you've got your show ponies and they're the columnists and they can cause lots of different trouble in lots of different ways. So in terms of the hierarchy, it is shifting. As you say, war correspondents, they don't come in really. That's a particular...
They're busy.
There's a particular type. I remember my agent once saying to me, I mean, I used to be able to drink so well. I could drink like a foreign correspondent. And there's a sort of certain truism to that. But they don't often come in. Investigations, which, when you get an amazing investigation, I always think those are people that are sort of rock stars. And there are some papers that really sort of pride themselves on having those great investigations. I mean, The Guardian's got a great investigations editor. The Sunday Times obviously have always had their insight team, and it's a big thing. Though if you get a big one of those, that's a terrific thing, and you are a bit of a rock star when you bring one of those in. But in general, you're kind of toiling away on things that are very, very expensive form of journalism to run because you can go for so long and it needs so much legal and it may never, never come to fruition because you can't get people to talk. So they're sort of quiet rock stars in lots of ways. But the hierarchy is shifting. But yeah, I mean, I don't know really what to say about royal correspondents. They're so grand themselves. I honestly can't tell you.
It's a great question. Also, by the way, I don't want us to lose at the end of that answer that you gave one of the greatest pieces of advice to anyone who's starting out in any industry, which is be low maintenance, except for in salary negotiations. Yeah. I think that's absolutely perfect.
Immediate question for you on TV theme tunes, Richard, from Katie Green. Now, she says, there are many timeless TV theme tunes. Shows I would watch on a Saturday night decades ago, I can still clearly remember the theme tune. There are also modern shows like The Traitors that have really well-produced theme music. 3 questions. How much budget is allocated to this? At which point in the production process is it made or composed? And 3, have you, Richard, ever rejected a theme for not suiting the show?
Yeah. My brother did the theme for 8 out of 10 Cats.
Did he? I didn't know that.
Yeah, he did it with like a super group. There's like someone from Supergrass and someone. There's like it's like really the people behind that.
Wow.
It's amazing. I saw that question. I spoke to a guy called Paul Farrer, who is the absolute don of TV theme music. So he did Weakest Link, The Chase, The Wheel is one of his, and I put some of Katie's questions to him. By the way, he gave me so much other information that if you have any questions about TV theme music, I already have the answer. So anyone else who's got another one, yeah, it's interesting from a TV producer's point of view. There's a series of things when you get a format off the ground. Set being one of them, theme music, all these things that kind of make a show feel, professional and real. So, but by and large, you wouldn't have theme music until it's been commissioned, and then you go out and do it. And sometimes you just buy library music. But you have people you work with. We work with a guy called Mark Sylvan, who's great as well. But Paul is sort of the king of the industry, and the producer will have ideas. Paul Farrer said the worst thing is he says sometimes you get producers who go, yeah, they've asked me to deal with you, Paul, because I DJ in my spare time. So and Paul's like, oh, okay.
So we got a live one here.
Yeah, exactly. Now the role of a TV theme composer is interesting. We just think of the theme music, and actually, if you watch any show, watch Weakest Link, watch The Wheel, for example, which are both Paul's, and you'll see. Of course, there's theme music, but there are also music beds throughout the show. Yeah. So when you're talking in transition between rounds, we have a thing called stings, which is the transition. Yeah. So we're literally, let's play round 1. And the composer is doing all of those things. So the composer's got their 30-second theme music, but also all the way through they go, okay, we need a 5-second sting based on that theme music. We need a 10-second sting based on that theme music. We need a 1-second sting. So they're doing all of that. They're producing all those sort of sound effects and things for the show. Buzzers and things like that. Often the composer would do as well if you wanted to be a sort of sound collage. And so it's a huge job, essentially scoring a television program. So the theme tune has to do one job, which is it's really catchy, here's the show. But especially these days, also then has to bleed into 10 seconds, 5 seconds, 2 seconds, 1 second, all these different versions of it. This is why I love working in television. Like one of the many reasons I love working in television. I was talking to Paul about The Wheel. See, that's a catchy theme tune.
Yeah.
The Wheel.
Yeah.
The Wheel. And Paul says, I don't really remember composing it, but he said, I really like it. He said, but what I do remember is so much of my time was, and this is why things are never, ever simple. So much of my time was, you've got the wheel going round and round and round, and it slows down. And he said, and I need music that can speed up and slow down and keep time with the wheel. This is the thing I need to do. He said, so a lot of my time was sitting in a room with the engineers who are making the wheel. And they were actually timing the wheel and making it go round. And so our job is we sit down and work out, you tell me the speed it's going to go, you tell me the speed it can go, you tell me the rate at which it declines, all of that stuff. And I then compose to that.
It's all maths.
Yeah. But me as a producer, I'm thinking about Michael McIntyre and the questions and stuff like that. And meanwhile, in a room somewhere across, the country, there is a composer and an engineer making my show better for me by both being brilliant at their jobs. So, the role of a composer is a complicated one in that regard. So obviously you want the music to be catchy, but then they have to design all sorts of other things for you. In terms of when it is done, by and large, someone like Paul, you would get in very early in a show because you want the graphic identity of the show and the music to all fit each other. But he says that at times he says he remembers 2 specific occasions. He remembers a live morning television show ringing him and saying, we need a new music for the end of the show. And he's thinking, okay, when do you need it by? They go, oh, no, it's for the end of the show. So he had to compose something, send it through to them by the end of the show. And
it's like doing a match report, but harder.
Yeah, exactly. And he's also the music director on Michael McIntyre's big show.
Yeah.
And he gets a call saying, oh, Michael Added Jones is on Send to All. And Michael's just had an idea. He wants to do a version of Walking in the Air with Aled.
Yeah.
And Paul's like, oh, but when do you need it? They go, well, the theatre doors have opened, but not that many people in yet. So, but essentially, he's got like kind of half an hour, 45 minutes to do that, which someone like, you know, any creative love.
Yeah.
You love that sort of
Well,
challenge.
we only understand a deadline, so
Yes, exactly.
in many ways, it doesn't matter. That's probably when you just started it anyway.
But by and large, if you have a big show like that, The Wheel or something like that, the composer has to be part of the team very, very early on. And, you know, just if you are interested in sound design and music and stuff like that, if it's a career you want to go into, sit and watch an episode of The Weakest Link or The Wheel and see where the beds are and see where the stings are and see how they relate to the music and what have you. And it's really fascinating. And, you know, incredibly lucrative as well. And, you know, so Paul will do what, you know, Weakest Link, that music goes around the world. He was saying, oh, I'm in China and I put the TV on and literally the first thing I hear is my music. And, you know, it's an incredible job, but you don't notice a lot of what they do. So theme tunes is an interesting question, but actually there's so much more to a theme tune than meets the eye.
We must do something on film music on another week. That's just reminded me.
Film music.
Yeah, and composing of film music is really interesting. And there's obviously some complete geniuses working in that. But anyway, we'll do that on another week.
But thank you, lovely question. And also thank you to Paul Farrer. Paul Farrer also, by the way, said, if you ever want me to remix your theme tune, I would happily do it for free because I love the podcast.
Oh,
and he's like the best in the business.
Yes,
so
yes, please.
Maybe we'll set him that challenge.
Okay.
Marina, Alison Barton has a question for you. Can TV critics choose for themselves the programmes they will review each week? Also, if they don't have full editorial control, can they refuse to review a specific programme if there are personal reasons why they would not be comfortable doing so? Would the approach be the same for film and book critics?
Okay, good one, Alison. I would say that in general, if you are a TV critic, you're going to want to do the big things of the week. It doesn't mean like every week you're doing The Apprentice every week because it happens to be big at the time, but you're going to want to cover that one and you'll probably cover off the series launch. So most of them, I don't want to say there's a herd mentality because they all may have completely different views about it, but if a big show comes out like Traitors or whatever, you're all going to be writing about it because it's the big show of the week. Don't try and sort of be one of those people who says, oh, I'm not going to cover that, I'm too grand for it. If you've got a sort of whole page and you come once a week, as some of the tabloid TV critics do, or if you do, there's a TV review every day, as there is in some of the broadsheets, you can do quite a lot of things. So you'll hopefully cover quite a lot of different shows. And if you're any good at your job, you'll be watching a huge amount of television anyway. But in terms of saying I won't review it, my God, I mean, I would really think you're in the wrong job. But it's not. I do hear in newsrooms now of some younger reporters saying, you know, I don't really want to cover this story. I don't agree with J.K. Rowling. It's like, well, so what? I mean, it's a news story. I don't agree with Donald Trump. You can write about him. And I have heard that there's a bigger sort of movement to people saying, I'm not really comfortable writing this story, which to me is like, well, then you're in the wrong job because your job is to write news stories and it doesn't matter what the news is about. Critics, I don't know. Sometimes I do know that some film critics, you've asked about whether it extends to film. I do know some film critics who, you know, may have connections within the business or they may know people. If that person is behind a smaller film that's not very good, then you can just think, well, that's good. I don't have to review it. I'm just not going to review that because I could probably only give it a kicking because it's not very good. But you couldn't, you know, if that's one of the big releases of the week, you're not going to not review, I don't know, Killers of the Flower Moon or whatever it is. You're going to review all of those things. Often part of the job of critics is sort of managing those relationships because you're going to see the people at the theatre. Yeah. I'm afraid that something that does happen, and it's happened also within football reporting, things like that, people saying, we don't like this thing you've written about us, so you're not allowed to come to our press conferences anymore. You know, we don't like the review you gave us. You now will not come to, you know, we're not going to send you Warner's films or something like that. Not to slight Warner's, I'm just naming a film company. But they might do that. And that is obviously very bad. And you can't have that. We have to have freedom of speech and we have to have freedom of criticism and people should be able to write whatever they want. And you have to allow people into your press conferences and things like that. But it must be said that there's been an increase in that. And in those situations, what I would always hope to try and do, and there've been mixed success on this, is say, if you don't let my colleagues into, even, I mean, sometimes politicians might exclude certain journalists. If you don't let us all in, none of us will do it. Yeah. And I think you really have to sort of quickly form a little sort of cross-title union saying, we're not going to do this. We're all going to sort of put our pens down or whatever if you don't let us in. So I think all of these relate to stories of criticism in some way or another, whether you're criticising a football club or a movie or whatever. But I think you have to sort of band together and say, we must have the right to disagree with something or to report unfavourably on you, and then you have to sort of unionise in the moment.
And also, as you say, so critics always have to do the big releases, big TV shows, big films, but then the good ones will find little nuggets that you won't have seen, and they'll put that on the same page, and they'll
That's
say,
the beauty of the job, to be able to say, you need to watch this, and you can surface things that otherwise might, in this huge age of content, people might not hear about.
We always used to, I always remember, like back in the sort of heyday of the newspapers, so every day, every TV page would have the picks of the day, and that by now was just everything that was new on that day. So, whatever new show was on, they would talk about it, and they would be nice about it or awful about it. But you get some producers who, I think, obviously never read the papers, because they would go, oh my God, we're pick of the day. Okay, we've done it. We've done it again. You go, no, you're pick of the day because you're a new show. They've literally just given you 1 star and said, what is this show doing on television? Pick of the day is not a recommendation. It's not saying, my goodness, this I've really picked it's not the cream of the crop. It's literally, here are some new shows that are on today. But yeah, people come in and say, pick of the day. You go, oh, you haven't read it, have you?
I must say that one of my favourite things about, if you're the best TV critics, film critics, book critics, whatever, you should really feel that you do not have to have seen the show.
Yeah.
They'll tell you a little bit about it, but I'm there for the writing. And, there are people like, I don't know, obviously Clive James, Victor Lewis Smith back in the day, where you'd be like, I couldn't care less whether I've seen the show. Nancy Banks Smith, I just want to read this writing. And that's, I think, the mark of a sort of great critic. Yeah. And there just simply isn't time to read all these books and watch all these films and do all those things. So a great critic can make you feel like, this is one of the reasons I love the London Review of Books, because they've got these really in-depth articles.
Finally, we're onto the London Review of Books.
But they've got these sort of brilliant, and you think, I would love to read this sort of extraordinary history of, I don't know, costume in something, but I'm honestly not going to have time. And then someone has done a really in-depth but beautifully written review with lots of their own outside knowledge in, and you think, great, I haven't actually read the book, but I have done the next best thing. But ideally also, I have to say this because there is a sense with some critics that they do not actually like the thing they're writing about. Also,
I think TV criticism is one of those things where, certainly in the broadsheet sometimes, they will give TV criticism to someone who doesn't know a great deal about TV in a way that it would be unthinkable in music or in film or anything like that.
Or covering the city or sport, I don't really know much about money. Don't just turn up to a shareholders meeting.
And you read stuff and go, you fundamentally haven't understood how that programme is made or why they've done that. And that's bad. Tabloids, weirdly, have always been rather good at reviewing television and understanding it. But yeah, occasionally, there's some great broadsheet TV critics, but occasionally they'll give someone like a piece and you just think, this doesn't seem right.
Yes, you must not put someone in charge of that who is not an expert in the medium, which seems very obvious.
Yeah, or who doesn't like it.
Yeah, or who doesn't like it.
And care for it.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. God, we got a lot covered there, didn't we?
Yes, we did. But there are so many questions we haven't got around to. There's a good one on sex scenes, but I think we're going to have to do that one next week.
There's some interesting cancel culture questions, which I think we both have
we should do
strong opinions on.
More fully on that. Yes, exactly. Okay, well, please keep sending them in.
I had a follow-up last week. Someone was asking, do they think they'd ever bring back This Is Your Life? And I got a message from a very big-name TV presenter saying they'd just been offered a reboot of This Is Your Life. So having said it would never come back, this person turned it down, by the way, I think for the same reasons that we said it wouldn't work. But interesting, isn't it? So it's all out there. But if you do have, stuff about specific shows and shows you used to watch and stuff, questions like that are always fascinating. I can do a tight 20 on blockbusters, for example. But anything like that at all. But we got there's so many questions.
There are so many questions.
People like the entertainment business.
Yes, they do, and they want to know how it works. Okay, the rest is entertainment@gmail.com is the address, and we will see you for the main show on Tuesday.
See you, everybody.
Take care. Bye bye.